Okay, now continuing into the second turn here with my game of Pax Romana, and I'm definitely taking my time and enjoying this one. Well, a lot of the turn didn't happen on the first turn. The first turn, you start right off with the activations. So there's this big set of sort of administrative stuff. Income phase, we're going to collect some income there. Then we got to pay maintenance, and there's going to be a bidding there, etc. So I'm going to kind of step into that. First of all, the income is pretty easy. I've already set those values, so I'll just collect them. It's kind of hard to see them here, but we can see like 14 bucks for Carthage. It looks like 19 bucks for the East is probably the richest. Now, the East has something in, I gotta make sure if that's correct, but the East has something interesting. They also get to roll on the Baghdad booty call table. Yeah, definitely Berg at work there. On a couple of rolls, it can cause a successor war with the Ptolemies. On the other hand, one of those comes with a good amount of money, the other one comes with crappy money, and they kind of indicate the fact that the Seleucids had territories to the east here that were fairly important. I'll work my way through most of this stuff. One of the more interesting things is during the maintenance phase, everybody secretly determines how many galleys, and to tell you the truth, how many troops that they're going to be committing to keeping on the board. Now, the heavy infantry they get to keep for free as long as they don't go over their max manpower limits. But the galleys, they have these little counters to declare how many that they're going to keep on the board. That may not be a sufficient number. Given that when you actually build units, you're supposed to secretly allocate that, you've got paper and pencil for this game, right? All right. Well, I was very much mistaken about the income for the East. They should only be at 11 bucks, not that big 19. So our highest people are the Carthaginians and Greeks, both collecting 14. Greeks at 11 and Romans at 7. I've pulled the money in, just moving cash over. At this point, then, we go down to the maintenance phase. Here's the tricky part. You got to look through everything. There's no counters or anything to keep track of this, and they'd be a pain in the ass to do so. To make sure that your amount of heavy infantry types don't exceed your maximums, and to find all your galleys. That's kind of a pain in the ass part of the game, but that's what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to do it on camera, obviously. Okay, so taking a quick look at things. Trying to think of what to speak to first here. Let's talk about the heavy infantry first. The limits for a nation, and everybody's at stable, are quite high. Even poor Carthage, with its only a 15, still only has 5 heavy infantry on the board, and much worse than that. When you look at civ points, that's the other limitation here. If you exceed your civ points, you're going to get unrest levels. Now, the Carthaginians have, I think, only 5 heavy infantry. Let me recount. 2, 3, yeah, 4, maybe another one somewhere, who knows. Okay, I came to the conclusion that they were okay. The one person who's not okay, Rome has nothing, by the way, they're gone. Those Pontus troops don't count. But the one person who does have a problem here is the East. They actually have 7 heavy infantry units on the board. They start with this big reinforcement thing, and they don't have as many civ points. Reason you need to build cities, etc. So we need to look to see. That's rule 14.2 according to this. Of course, these rules have some serious errors in them, so there's no guarantee there. But let's see. I think it's probably 1 per extra unit you have. No, it's by multiplier. So by being just 1 off, they lost the same as I think if they had twice their civ rating. So you can actually build a much larger army and just take a little bit of pain from that. It's reduced by 2 if. Hold on. No, I'm sorry. how is this worded? If a player has more than he has civ points, his stability drops by 2. It's reduced by 3 if he has more than 3 times. Yeah, wow, he loses another one actually, 2 for that 1 unit. That's painful. Had he realized what his civ points were, what his troop total was, he would have reduced that. But by not keeping track of my civ points on the board, I couldn't be sure of that, right? So 1 extra heavy infantry is costing him a great deal. All right. Oh, well. The next part of this, though, is the bidding on the galleys. Now, nobody else has galleys except Carthage and Greece, so they secretly put a counter down. Carthage is only going to pay $4. Basically, what they're looking at is they used up more than $10 last turn. They don't want to lose too much. That means they're going to destroy one of their galleys. They're going to get rid of this one far away. Now, galleys only cost $2 to build. So in a sense, as long as they don't have a threat against them, Carthage's navy is too large in a lot of ways. The Greek navy is only 3 and isn't really in competition with Carthage. Nobody else has a navy except maybe those pirates or whatever. So it's really not too big a threat. Now, the problem for Carthage is they might bring Syracuse into play, and that's got a navy, but not much of one. So Carthage pretty much is happy. They have enough navy to interdict anybody who goes against them, and that's really all they need. Nobody else can interdict them right now. Okay. I've already pulled my leaders off the board. Militia also come off. No biggie there. Mercenaries, I've pulled them off earlier. Soldier of Fortune came off. Barbarian leaders and forces. But this is an independent force. There's no way to tell this. There's no color distinction between them. You're using barbarian infantry for the Jews, but they are counted as an independent force. And it's just something you have to try to remember. So they will not get removed. But I haven't removed my militia yet. That'll be coming off. And if any mercenary cav existed, that would be turned into regular cav for the player at this point. And then I'll be randomly picking leaders. Now that's just reaching into the thing. The first one I pick will go on the capital. The second one somewhere else. I'll do that for Rome. Well, it's going to be a pain in the ass to shuffle. I take it in both hands and do it. No biggie, we can show that in a bit. And then, well, then we'll get to the manpower phase and I'll probably have to talk a little bit about that. The only militia we had in the game were the Roman ones, and the Romans had already been destroyed, so no biggie there. Taking a look at some of the leaders that showed up for Rome, well, we put them both here. We've got a faster leader and then a better military one. Let's see if we can zoom in. I know that helps show things. Who's next? Greece. Well, they had to put one in the capital, so that's their first leader. And then their next leader, they got an elite leader. Now that, not only has he got good values, and he can't come back again next turn, but it does open up the possibility of a conqueror coming in. I don't think there are any other effects to elite leaders in this that aren't represented by their numbers and those factors. That gives them something kind of cool. They would like to get him out of there and commanding a reasonable force to face against the East. I think the Greeks are kind of going to have to just give up on southern Italy at this point. They can't fight 2 wars, and they're too much at risk against the Easterners. We'll see where Rome goes from there, though. Rome may decide, hey, if they're fighting, I got to do something about Carthage. I don't know. That would be rather appropriate, though, I think. The problem there? Well, Carthage is bigger than they are. That's always an issue. And they have these pontines that they could use to attack the Greeks. If they could really come to an agreement with the East, hey, we're going to work together against Carthage, let's finish Greece off now, maybe it would be easier. But there's no talking. Speaking of the East, their main first leader showed up here. Their second one came down over here, kind of a crappy guy, but they won a leader somewhere. And Carthage itself got a crappy leader here, and a fairly quick guy here, which is pretty important because those added die rolls will add to the ability to knock out these tribes and gather some of this territory, get the extra money, and you know, eventually they can get this whole area as a territory, giving them yet another buck, and then maybe work their way towards Italy. Silly me, I forgot to roll on my favorite table in the game, the Baghdad booty call table. Making sure I'm on the right scenario here because the table's a little different. Let's see what we get. 5. That's going to lose 2 from our treasury. So that means the East is a little poorer than they would have otherwise been. Instead of gaining money from their other possessions, they're having to commit some military effort out from the territory they own back here. Okay, so like I said, purchases are all secret, but I did them sequentially because, you know, my mind is going to remember as well as I could anyway. So what did I do? Well, I'm going to work my way across the map as I tend to. For Carthage, decided to continue to forego Sicily. Now there's advantages to Sicily. If I can take eastern Sicily and Melita and put a garrison in Melita, as well as eastern Sicily, I get an extra territory, which is good for objective points. It's good for my income. It's an extra point of income. But you know what? My army has been built over here. I didn't have the power to do this last turn. I looked at my cash. I don't have the power to build an army here that could probably face Syracuse and operate down here in Spain. So I built a heavy infantry here in Mauritania and a light infantry in Spain, and I'm going to see if I can capture things. But the straits that Italy is in, that the Romans are in, they were only really able to afford 1 legion to add to their non-existent army. That only left them with $5. 4 activations, that's $4. Now, maybe they don't want their activations, to tell you the truth, because there isn't much they can do with them without an army. But, well, they kind of lucked out because the Greeks have their own problems and did not build an army down here in Bruttium, which means they may well lose their control down there. These garrison units aren't going to defend at all. This cav isn't useful in the city. So the Greeks may actually be pulling out of Greece. There's a couple of territories they have to lose. This will fall immediately, except the Greeks get to go first. They could pay to build it up rather than make it be conquered. But whatever way you want to look at that, the Romans only have enough money to conduct their campaigns, and they don't have really a big enough army at 4 strength points to take this on. But the rest of Bruttium may fall, and it may, as a total, be controlled by the Romans because of that. Going over to the Greeks, well, their big goal is to save their elite leader that they have here. They're really worried about his existence now, so they built themselves 3 big heavy infantry units. That's all they can build. They would love to have cavalry, but they've lost all other territory except for Galatia over here. They could have built cav in Galatia, I suppose, but that wouldn't be over with their forces. So they may have to walk into the showdown with the East with nothing but heavy infantry. Over to the East itself, they added nothing here. They couldn't. They don't own Ionia. And they've only got 2 of the territories, and someone else owns more. They didn't build anything over here to push in as reinforcements. The Carthaginians, of course, are planning on shifting troops up into Hispania using secondary moves, I guess. Oh, the Carthaginians, they didn't build light infantry. They built a cav here. I don't know if I mentioned that. But that's a bonus because that gives you a column shift. And once they get their second cav here up in there from Numidia, they'll have like a +3 to their die roll shifts, which should allow them to handle the Spanish natives pretty well. What the East did instead was built itself up a couple of heavies here with the intention of moving against Judea and maybe having a garrison down there against the Ptolemaics. They think they've got the force here under this kind of lousy leader. All right. Well, let us see. So this is really important. You know, if you look at what can you build where, the Romans can only build their legions and heavy infantry in Italy. Carthage has all these different choices. In Spain, you don't get any heavy infantry, but you get the light infantry and the cap. What there isn't in this game that there is in, say, Imperium Romanum is sort of this limit to how much you can produce each turn. But Imperium Romanum is dealing on a much more operational level than this game is. Which is to say, the armies that you build, you're raising, I think, every quarter. Here you're raising them every 25 years. I think limits as to army size able to be raised wouldn't make a lot of sense in that context. All right, let me make sure that I've gotten everything done. That's the manpower phase. I'm ready to roll with the activation phase. Yes, I know, I went into this in detail. I'm not going to do that again in the same kind of way. I just thought it's important to see the beginning part of the turn, because on the first turn, all we could really see in detail was the end part of the turn. All right, up it goes.